Thanks for staying with us. The African Development Bank kicks off its Africa Investment Forum this week. Now, the forum is described as an innovative investment marketplace. Will focus on structuring deals, screening and enhancing projects, and of course attracting co-investors. Joining us in the studio to tell us more is Ronnie Ntuli, the founder of Kerma Global Limited, a company that holds private equity interests, and Victor Oladokun, spokesperson for the African Development Bank. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. I know indeed, especially in your field, time is indeed money. And speaking of time, I feel, Victor, if we could start with you as the spokesperson for the African Development Bank. Summits, conferences, networking sessions, it really seems to be the season. And we see many of those, especially here in Johannesburg, as one of the major economic hubs on the African continent. What makes this forum different?
Marcel, actually, you've hit the nail on the head, and actually with your intro, I think you've really covered the bases. This is a completely innovative transactional forum. Look, Africa is awash in business forums, but at the end of the day, we've been doing stuff like this all over the continent for 30, 40, 50 years. But we have to ask ourselves the questions. At the end of these conferences, at the end of these forums, what is it? What kind of deals are on the table? What are the takeaways? We are about to change this. The Africa Investment Forum is a complete game changer. How? What we have on the table, we've curated about 230 projects worth about $208 billion. Of that, $40 billion worth of projects will be on the table, and another 28 will be screened in what we're calling a gallery walk. We're bringing together...
A gallery walk?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're bringing together institutional investors from all over the world, private sector players from all across the continent, policymakers, to take a look at these deals in 28 boardroom sessions. So this is not a talk shop at all. So
is it like speed dating?
You can call it that. I think you've hit the nail on the head. But there's a reason for this. By 2030, Africa's population will be 2 billion. I heard one of your news items earlier saying about 7 out of 10 are unemployed here in South Africa, and we can replicate that over and over again. So we're dealing with a ticking time bomb. But ultimately, Africa's solutions are in its own hands, and we have to do business unusual. And that's what this conference is about. It's really going to be a game changer. And I want to say a big thank you to the President of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, and Premier Makura for the wonderful support that they've provided so far.
Now, Ronnie, let me bring you in here as an experienced businessman, entrepreneur in various fields. What made this forum enticing to you and your colleagues, if I could call them that?
Great. So, for us, again, really very simple. Let me start by saying how much we have to praise the African Development Bank for the work that they've done in innovating a concept of this nature. It is literally, I think as Victor said, it's unprecedented. The platform is transactional. There's enough talk shops. You know, you can go through a list of conferences in different parts of the continent, not only in South Africa, and people talk outside the continent about the continent. What excites us as a business is really that the African Development Bank has pulled together a multiplicity of African development finance institutions, Africa Export-Import Bank, Africa 50, TDB in East Africa, DBSA in South Africa. So it's pulling together a partnership of and mobilizing Africa's financing capability. We need to show the world that Africa is serious to put its institutional money where its mouth is. That's a big, but also to encourage additionality by global financiers also pulling in to support Africa's development. That's the first part. So a really serious statement of intent. The fact that it's transactional rather than talk, I think if you look at the agenda, there is content. I think there's content also where African leaders themselves, African heads of state are saying, we are serious about attracting investment. We are serious about creating an enabling environment which finance needs and investors need to get comfort around. It's different. It really is different.
Now your CV, I've got your CV in front of me, is as long as our arm. It'll take us a while to go through it. But your various spheres of business interest include aviation, railway, financial services sectors, and on we go.
Correct.
You walk into the forum, you walk into your first 2 boardrooms where these meetings have been put in place.
Yeah.
What catches your eye?
Yeah. So, look, the presence of our outlook, if you talk about the work that we do, our outlook is really around how do we, rather than just doing transactions for transaction's sake, or rather than just investing for investment's sake, how do we play a role, how do we arbitrage African risk as an institution in order to support development of the continent? That's our outlook. If you look at all the things we do... Because that affects
the bottom line, doesn't it? It makes sense.
If you look at all the things that we do, people have said we're diversified, but if you look at it, the common thread is how do we support development on the continent? So a platform like this gives us the opportunity to present how we support development on the continent and to work with partners and financiers that have the same outlook. That's what attracts us.
I think if I could just add to what Ronnie just said here, our investment needs in Africa are estimated to be about $130 billion to $170 billion a year. Of that, just in infrastructure alone, there's a financing gap of about 68 to $80 billion. The question is, how do we bridge that gap? And that's where our other multilateral development partners, international investors come into the picture. There are deals to be done. There are opportunities here. This is still a frontier environment as far as investment is concerned. And right now, as we speak, assets under management globally are estimated at $131 trillion. And we're just saying that as Africans, if we can even get just 1% of that, crowd that in to Africa on an annual basis, we can make a huge difference. It's not just about South Africa. It's not just about individual countries. It's about the whole continent moving it forward in a totally different transactional way.
Now, you talk about deals to be done. What I like about that is that the speak that we're hearing coming from these summits are far more direct than I remember it being, covering these kinds of events over the last 2 decades. There is a sense of urgency, I feel, at the moment, that we're not just having a talk shop with lovely speakers from different places with great CVs. We want deals to be done, and I suppose the idea behind this forum is that it's not just cards that are being exchanged, it's actually contracts that are going to be signed, Victor.
Again, you couldn't have put it better. What you're going to find out is whatever remarks or addresses are made are going to be at a minimum. TED Talk type, 5-6 minutes off the stage, and then we get down to business. So the thrust of the business is going to be during the boardroom sessions. And over 3 days, there are going to be 28 of those, very, very high level. And it's strictly about business, not talk.
Now, in terms of timing, we come a week after the president's. It wasn't officially called the President's Investment Summit, but that's kind of what we're all calling it. In Sandton, we had these pledges being signed, around 290 billion rand, I think it was. You're talking about that kind of number, but in dollars. I suppose there's enough room for all of these kinds of things to happen, and indeed, the more the merrier. You wouldn't think that would have taken wind out of your sails, Ronnie, Victor, both of you?
No, absolutely not, because the events of the previous week were about South Africa, and much needed. Now we're moving on to a continental scale. So there's absolutely room for both of them. I've given you the numbers on what the financing gap is, and that's really the big task ahead of all of us. We're not unaware of the fact that we do have challenges of perceptions of risk. And what we will be bringing to the table are very, very serious de-risking and co-financing instruments, which will make business a whole lot easier, not just for South Africa, but for the continent as a whole.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I think to add to the point that Victor makes, I think the Africa Investment Forum is a continental initiative, and that's quite important. I think the work that was done by the government of South Africa in the South Africa version of the forum is worthy of compliment. This is, as a continent, as a complete continent from Cape to Cairo, we can't today talk about enough mobilization of capital and or investment today. So if South Africa drives initiatives to promote investment in South Africa, it's important. It really is important. But it's not an either or. Is it South Africa or is it the continent? I think we are at such an early stage of development. Many countries on the continent are at the early stage of development. We need to mobilize, working together in collaboration, all 54 countries, to support development on the continent. It would be too early to talk about...
And I think what you said there is really important. This is the very first time in the history of the continent that we've ever seen anything like this together. So it's really working together, multiple partners from diverse sectors, working together as one with a common purpose to transform the economy of Africa.
I think we're going to leave it there, gentlemen. Thank you so much. It sounds very, very exciting, and I'm sure, especially my colleagues in the business desk, will be keeping a beady eye on those great deals that we hope will benefit both South Africa and indeed the continent. We thank you so much.
I feel like a little child. I'm like, how many nights? How many
Is it like, are you going to be like a kid in a candy store, right?
Marcel, thank you very much for having us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming through, and do keep us posted on how everything goes down. Let's change gears now.